Target Profile: Thel Vadami, Supreme Commander of the Fleet of Particular Justice. Target Profile was debriefed by ONI agent Jameson Locke. First confirmed contact with Vadami came in 2535 on an unofficial human colony known as the Rebel. Reports from Spartans 006, 111, and 120 indicate that Vadami was at that point playing a minor role for the Prophet of Regret. Vadami eluded all such efforts to stop him, and he continued his unpredictable and devastating campaign against human colonies. Vadami also stands out from other Covenant commanders in the frequency in which he takes a personal role in ground assaults. Battle of Medici, 31 March to 3 April 2535. Planet Synhelios. The recently appointed Synheli Kaidan of Clan Vadam, Thel Vadami lies in wait for the inevitable attack by someone who doubts his capabilities. He soon gets what he is waiting for, as 3 assassins attempt to dispatch him. Thel quickly slays all 3 assassins, and immediately orders an assembly with the other clan elders. He first shows the elders that the attack failed without a scratch on him, and continues to claim that he killed the first 2 assassins with ease, and then let the 3rd assassin live to learn who sent the attack. Thel almost immediately noticed the stirring of Koida Vadam. Now knowing the person responsible, he explains his supremacy to all of the elders. Afterwards, he confronts Koida, who foolishly tells Thel that he sent the assassins. Thel then kills Koida and banishes his lineage from the keep. He then tells the elders that he is to be sent to the human colony world Charybdis 9 by the hierarchs. Planet Charybdis 9. The UNSC Midsummer Night arrives at the planet in order to prevent a group of insurrectionists from getting a shipment of Covenant weapons. Lieutenant Keyes and Major Watanabe go planetside to meet with an ONI group in order to complete their mission. However, the mission goes sour as the UNSC group is attacked by the insurrectionists and rioters. Major Watanabe is killed, and Keyes narrowly escapes the planet. As the group escapes the system, a Covenant fleet led by the High Prophet of Regret eliminates the 3 destroyers defending the planet, and immediately begins glassing the surface. High Charity. Thel Vadami is called to meet with the High Prophet of Regret, who is traveling with the fleet to witness the burning of another human world. Regret shows Vadami a modified plasma rifle and says that such modifications of Covenant weaponry by any other than the Prophet is heresy. Regret proceeds to order Vadami to track down these weapons, believing them to originate in a 23 Libre system from jackals that may be trading with humans. He also informs Vadami that the Kigyar ship, a psalm every day, along with a contingent of brutes, will accompany him on the mission. Vadami, displeased with the additional forces, gracefully accepts the mission as he receives a promotion, and knowing that he will be on the way to becoming a fleet master. After Vadami leaves, the Prophet expresses surprise of the humans being spread across so many worlds. This may be why the Covenant had lingered so long around Harvest instead of searching for other worlds. Planet Hesiod. After the uneventful voyage to Hesiod, the Drillhani and the Kigar mistress betray Vadami, destroying his ship, killing his crew, and taking him and his zealots prisoner. Aboard the UNSC Midsummer Night. Everyone is on edge as the Covenant vessel appears on radar, and must be careful to avoid detection. Following the Kestrel to Hesiod, they discover the rebels were using the asteroid as a hideout. Drifting closer, they discover that they are all connected as Jackal ships navigate through. The UNSC Midsummer Night is brought up to battle-ready status and begins making stealth maneuvers to avoid the patrolling ships. The Rebel. While being held captive, Jorah Cannery, who had thrown himself unarmed against the borders overtaking Thel Vadami, had been wounded and asked Thel to kill him for his shame, as it was dishonorable in Singhili culture to seek medical aid. Thel agrees, slamming a spike from a nearby bed into Jorah's head. The remaining zealots, led by Thel, decide to find a way to strike at the humans from inside the rubble, realizing that the Kigyar intended to gain ransom for them, and that the Jerohani wanted credit for finding the humans themselves. They decide to go after Peter Bonifacio, whom they believe is their leader. The Singhili proceed to trick their Ungoi guard, kill him, and the rest of their guards to escape. UNSC Midsummer Night. Commander Zhang discovers that the leaders of the rebel know of their presence. The rebel commander begins their bombardment of the ship, and Zhang orders that they move to open space. However, the engines are taken offline from the bombardment, and on the bridge, Lieutenant Badia Campbell shoots Zhang, killing him, and wounding Lieutenant Kirtley and Lieutenant Lee before Keyes can tackle her. Lieutenant Campbell says that the insurrectionists will win eventually before shooting herself in the head. With the engines out of commission and Zhang dead after locking down the nuclear warheads, Keyes has no choice but to surrender the ship. The rubble. Lieutenant Keyes and his crew are permitted to join the population. Keyes gives a speech urging them not to. Some stay with him, including ODST Faison, Lieutenant Kirtley, and Lieutenant Lee. However, many others join. Keyes asks Faison why a number of the ODSTs are joining. Faison reminds him that ODSTs are first in everything, implying that they are going undercover in support. Meanwhile, as Delgado returns to the rubble, he is detained by Bonifacio's private forces. The council suspects him for dealing with the Kigyar for the nav data, since he was the only one apart from the council that knew its location. While conversing in guard, Delgado learns that Bonifacio's smuggling ship, the Kestrel, was sabotaged by the Spartans, and its nav data was destroyed. As a result, Bonifacio needs Delgado's data in order to continue his operations in the inner colonies. Delgado is then taken to meet with the Security Council, where he learned of the Exodus Project. While the Council refuses to tell Delgado what the Exodus Project is, Diego reassures him that it is for the good of the rebel and requires nav data. This convinces Delgado to retrieve the data for the Council. Diego and Bonifacio decide to accompany him to retrieve the data from Delgado's ship, the Distancia. On board the ship, Bonifacio betrays the two, forcing Delgado to release the nav data so he can give it to the Kigyar. And when Delgado resists, he shoots Diego. Bonifacio then makes off with the data and sabotages the ship's airlock, preventing Delgado from informing the council. As the ship runs out of air, Delgado sets off the distress beacon given to him by Spartan Grey Team. Medisit. Hesiod Moon. Meanwhile, Del Vadami and his zealots hijack the Kigyar ship and move to the surface of Medisit, a methane-rich moon of Hesiod where the Kigyar are breeding an army of Ungoi. They are able to kidnap the Kigyar leader, Reth. However, Reth reveals to the Singhili that he is also working on a mission assigned by the High Prophet of Truth. This discovery greatly confused Thel's soldier, Zar. Reth then escapes with the aid of some Ungoi he had converted. The rebel. Spartan Grey Team arrive and save Delgado, but are too late to aid Diego. They decide that with the nav data, the Kigyar will no longer value the rebel and will proceed to attack it. They need to capture one of the Kigyar ships to find their plans. However, even 3 Spartans would not be able to capture a Covenant ship. Concluding, they need to liberate the captured ODSTs from Midsummer Night and use their help to secure the ship. With the help of the rebels' AI, Juliana, the Spartans are able to successfully liberate Keyes and many of his men from the prison. Delgado joins the UNSC forces as they assault the Kigyar ship Infinite Spoils. The humans have the element of surprise and manage to capture it. However, Faison is wounded in the leg during the skirmish. Faison tells Delgado to leave him, but instead he secretly asks Lieutenant Keyes for aid, and Jai 006 is sent to rescue the ODST. Meanwhile, Thel and his zealots encounter Faison. He manages to injure Zar with his sidearm before being killed. Zar treads on heresy by admiring the humans' act of staying behind. The two elites are interrupted by the arrival of Jai-006. The Spartan and Thel fight each other, with neither gaining any ground, and Jai leaves when he sees Phazon's body. Thel himself barely survives the encounter and wonders what that human was. Meanwhile, Adriana 111 sneaks up to Bonifacio in the Distancia and fires at it, disabling its engines and allowing her to board it. Bonifacio escapes in an escape pod, forcing Adriana to allow him to escape by withholding where he kept the nav data. Fortunately, the Spartan manages to find the data and returns to the Petya. With the information from the Kigyar vessel, the humans determine that the Kigyar are in fact planning a large attack on the rebel, with the hundreds of thousands of Ungoi being bred unchecked on the moon. Reth plans to capture the rebel and use the nav data to take the Exodus project, which is in fact a giant asteroid habitat planned to transport the entire population of the rebel away from both UNSC and Covenant to Earth to capture it. Doing this would earn the Kigyar much more favor in their prophet's eyes than the Singhili. Lieutenant Keyes devises a plan to stop this, while they take the recaptured nav data to the Exodus asteroid and begin evacuation of civilians. The humans would also bombard Medisit with the unneeded pieces of the rebel. To do that, AI Juliana informs them that the Kigyar surface defenses must be disabled. She outlines two main objectives: the anti-air battery and the sensor station. The destruction of these will allow her to drop pieces of the rebel onto Medisit, effectively destroying the Kigyar base. UNSC forces use a daring maneuver to drop ODSTs and the Spartans to the surface. Jai-006 and Adriana 111 aid the Marines with their objectives, laying charges on the AA battery and planting a remote nuke on a sensor station. The nuke, in addition to destroying the sensor station, also damages a large portion of the Kigyar base and wipes out much of their fleet. Without the sensor station, or AA battery, the Kigyar are powerless to stop AI Juliana as she systematically bombards their base with rebel fragments. Reth is killed during this bombardment. Del Vadimi, aboard his ship stolen from the Kigyar, sees this and decides to send the last of the Ungoi aboard on an abortive attempt to recapture the Exodus project. The attack fails as the human citizens successfully evacuate into the Exodus project. It and the UNSC Midsummer Knights jump into slipspace and set a course back to UNSC-held territory. The rebel engineers realize that they would not have enough supplies to reach their original destination, and Lieutenant Keyes convinces them that for the good of the rebel citizens, they must return to the UNSC. Bonifacio witnesses the bombardment of Medisit, when suddenly a massive Covenant fleet arrives out of slipspace. He attempts to hail them, and is momentarily glad to watch them turn towards him, but is quickly horrified when the cruiser vaporizes his pod. Thel and Zar meet with the High Prophet of Truth and Regret, who has arrived in the system with the fleet. It is revealed that Truth and Regret have been working separately, leading to the confusion between the separate orders. Zar believes that they will be executed and activates his energy sword to attack the prophets. Thel is horrified and draws his own sword and stabs Zar through the neck. Regret is shaken and leaves. But Truth tells Thel Vadimi that he will survive, but must speak nothing of the knowledge he has gained. Truth then proceeds to grant Thel a ship and the fleet of particular justice, hinting that he will soon become its commander. Planet Falak Numa, 18 Scorpio System. The Exodus asteroid and the UNSC Midsummer Night arrive safely, and the asteroid's inhabitants are evacuated safely before the asteroid shakes itself into pieces while in orbit around the planet. Planet Singhelios. Lak Vadimi discusses with Thel about the reorganization of the fleets and what might become of this new age. UNSC Space. Lieutenant Keyes returns and meets with Admiral Preston Cole and expects to receive a court-martial for his actions. Instead, he is congratulated and thanked. Admiral Cole promotes Keyes to commander and dismisses him. Keyes then leaves and Spartan Grey Team enter. During the battle, the Petya was abandoned, and they are looking for a new prowler. Admiral Cole grants them the ship and gives them new orders, describing them as more dangerous than ever, to the satisfaction of Grey Team. Delgado enlists in the UNSC Navy, and Commander Keyes returns to his apartment where his daughter, Miranda, resides. Operation Pale Shadow. 2535. Planet Irene. A UNSC operation to prevent the destruction of the planet from Covenant forces. During the Covenant assault on the colony, Spartan 2 Kelly 087 triggered a reactor breach that led to a 50 megaton blast at the Covenant Forward operating base. The destruction of the base allowed the city of New Kona to temporarily survive the battle. Despite the success of the operation, Planet Irene would later be glassed by the Covenant. Battle of Leonis Minoris, 1st through 14th January 2537. Leonis Minoris System. A fierce battle between the UNSC forces and the Covenant that eventually resulted in a UNSC victory. The Covenant discovered human presence in the system and began glassing the first two of the 3 planets in the system. Vice Admiral Preston Cole and his fleet rushed to the system and were able to successfully protect the 3rd planet at the cost of 10 ships. Despite the loss of 2 colony worlds and the 10 UNSC vessels, the UNSC Navy considered this defense a success. However, the loss weighed heavily on Cole's conscience. Spirit of Fire Infestation. 4th January 2537. UNSC Spirit of Fire. The ship's degrading AI, Serena, notes in a report that she is 6 days away from reaching the end of her 7-year operational lifespan. In keeping with procedures, she awakens the engineering specialist Violetta Maldani from cryosleep to perform routine maintenance examinations around the ship. As Maldini completes her inspection of Cryo Bay Foxtrot 7, she is attacked by a stowaway pod infector and is overtaken by the parasite. After placing the sector under lockdown, Serena spends the following days examining the organism's actions for future interests to the UNSC, as well as to quench her own misplaced curiosity. On January 4th, Serena witnesses the specimen reach the end of its life cycle and produce more infection forms. Having absorbed Maldini's knowledge of cryo chamber codes, the Flood then proceeds to open cryo tubes and infect more crew members. Realizing her duties were being inhibited by rampancy, Serena awakens Professor Ellen Anders to ask her for help dealing with the threatening situation. Approximately 15 minutes later, Spartan Jerome 092 of Red Team, who had arranged to be brought out of cryosleep in the event Anders was awoken, arises to find himself inside the flood-infested cryo bay. Due to enacted protocols, Serena and Anders are unable to help Jerome get out of the quarantine bay. Arming himself with a weapon and grenades, Jerome fends off the parasites and prevents them from overriding the lockdown when they gain important codes from one Lieutenant Kwan. While Jerome mows down pod infectors in combat forms, Serena discusses her condition with Anders and requests that she, and not Captain James Cutter, terminate her before she commits further fatal errors. As Jerome finishes eradicating the flood infestation in Cryo Bay Foxtrot 7, Serena informs him that one infected individual has managed to escape and is preparing to infect the crewmen in another bay. Chasing after the creature, Jerome is surprised to find it carrying more pod infectors on its back. After Jerome spends several minutes fighting off continuous infected flood forms with everything down to a chair, Serena, realizing that the flood has learned to hide its numbers by staying grouped together, quickly opens an exterior hatch and ejects the remaining flood into the vacuum of space, just narrowly avoiding flushing out Jerome as well. With the crisis having been averted, Jerome soon prepares to re-enter the cryostasis. He asks Anders if they are sure there are no more flood forms on board the ship, seeing as how Serena had failed to notice once before. Anders assures him that her own scans showed up no presence of other life forms, and says that he shouldn't bring up Serena's shortcomings as she'll no longer be with them. Jerome exchanges parting words and pleasantries with Anders and Serena as he enters his cryo chamber. Anders remains with Serena for a while to set up preparations for her dispensation. Before Anders heads back into cryostasis, Serena thanks her for having helped her. Serena then proceeds to record contingency briefings for the crew of the Spirit of Fire, covering different scenarios under which they may be awakened. After completing an incident report about the flood outbreak for Captain Cutter, Serena initiates her own final dispensation. Battle of New Harmony, 30 April to 3 May, 2537. Planet New Harmony. An assault on the colony by Covenant forces. UNSC forces retaliated and ultimately prevailed in space. Though the event is also referenced as the Fall of New Harmony, likely due to the heavy ground losses from both military and civilian. Data gained during the battle led to the discovery of a Covenant shipyard on asteroid K749, the site of what would become Operation Prometheus. Operation Huaca, 2537. Bonanza Asteroid Belt. An operation of UNSC forces against Covenant fleet forces. Spartan 3 Alpha Company was deployed during the operation in counterboarding actions against the Covenant fleet. The operation was a success, but no further details have been publicly released. Battle of New Constantinople. Operation Iron Greave, 31 May to 3 June, 2537. Planet New Constantinople. The battle was a large conflict between UNSC and Covenant forces. Vice Admiral Danforth Whitcomb and Spartan 3 Alpha Company were involved in the battle. Alpha Company highly distinguished themselves for their actions during the battle, particularly the actions of Hazel A302 caught the eye of Admiral Whitcomb. The battle was a victory for the UNSC, but ultimately the Covenant would return 2 years later to glass the colony world. Sergeant Edward Buck meets Veronica Dare. 2537. Castellaneta, resort orbiting Saturn. Edward Buck meets Veronica Dare for the first time. Ordered to take shore leave when Draco 3 was attacked, the two spent the week together until Dare revealed that she was an Oni operative and the two parted on rough terms. Operation Prometheus, 26 July to 2nd August, 2537. Asteroid K749. The Office of Naval Intelligence deployed the entirety of Spartan 3 Alpha Company to the asteroid. The Spartans' mission: disable as many Covenant reactors as possible so the liquid content of the facility would solidify, permanently clogging the machines and ruining the Covenant's capacity to produce further ship components. At 0700 hours on July 27, 300 Spartan 3s landed on the asteroid. Initial resistance to the company was light, and after 2 days, 7 reactors had been deactivated before the Covenant could organize a proper counterattack. Further Covenant counterattacks were initiated and continued to fail over the next 3 days, resulting in Alpha Company destroying another 13 reactors. However, the Covenant managed to arrange a massive counterforce. With the Spartans trading fire with Sinkhili and ground attack craft, more Covenant reinforcements flooded in on August 2nd, and the Spartans lost their unit cohesion in the battle, while the Sinkhili took up superior positions and better cover. By then, 89% of the asteroid had cooled, enough to render the shipyard inoperative. The Spartans were then cut off from their Calypso-class exfiltration craft, preventing them from escaping. Ultimately, all 300 Spartan 3s were killed. Although the mission was declared successful by Oni, and the K749 shipyard was disabled, the Spartans sustained 100% fatalities. Other than a small number of Spartans transferred to other units prior to the operation, these losses ended Alpha Company as an active fighting force. Battle of Camber, 1st through 7th January 2538. Planet Camber. The battle is known for the Covenant fleet of particular justice, led by Thel Vadami. The fleet penetrated the planet's early warning perimeter undetected and laid waste to the UNSC forces stationed there. The battle was a rout, with a total loss of all UNSC forces, a death toll of over 5 million, and the planet collapsed. Siege of the Atlas Moons, 2538. Atlas Moons, Valance System. A prolonged battle between the UNSC and Covenant forces. During the siege, Admiral Danforth Whitcomb participated in the engagement and gained reputation as a great military commander for his accomplishments during the battle. While the moons were attacked by the Covenant, they were not glassed. Battle of Colo, 1st through 7th January 2539. Planet Colo. The Covenant learned of the location of the planet from the databanks of a recovered human freighter and sent the fleet of Righteous Vigilance to destroy the colony. The planet was only protected by a handful of warships in orbit, and the Covenant scout ships were able to destroy them completely before the fleet even arrived. The planet was quickly glassed, and very few civilians were able to be evacuated during the conflict. Spartan 3 Beta Company training program initiated. 2539. Planet Onyx. Kurt Ambrose returns to the UNSC Points of No Return to be briefed on Alpha Company's performance and to proceed with training for Beta Company, where he learns of the complete destruction of Alpha Company during Operation Prometheus. Devastated by the images of the battle and the loss of his soldiers, Kurt improves the training regime for Beta Company and presses for upgrades to the SBI armor systems. Beta Company would be the second of 3 Spartan 3 companies to be recruited, trained, and put into service. Beta Company, like all Spartan 3 companies, would be trained on planet Onyx, which would last for 6 years until they received their augmentations at the end of training. Their training would continue to be led by former Spartan 2 Kurt Ambrose and Senior Chief Petty Officer Franklin Mendez. According to Lieutenant Commander Kurt Ambrose, the leader of the Spartan 3s, failure by Alpha Company would have resulted in the destruction of all humanity's Orion side colonies. Operation Guardian Lance, 12 July 2540. Jericho 7. The UNSC recovers several pieces of Covenant equipment for technological study. These pieces would later be put on display at the main atrium of Oni Sword Base on planet Reach. The Babysitter. Operation Grey Veil, 30 June 2541. Planet Heian. Prelude. An Oni mission to assassinate a Covenant prophet on the planet, resulting in a major disruption for Covenant logistics operations within the sector. The planet possessed a series of ruins that predated both the Covenant and the UNSC. In addition to killing the prophet, the assault team had a secondary objective of documenting these ruins. A team of 4 ODSTs, led by Master Sergeant Cortez, was ordered to carry out the mission. However, the actual assassination would be carried out by Spartan 2 Cal 141. This addition caused some resentment among the ODSTs that remained throughout the mission. The Raid. Deployed via drop pods from the UNSC Kronstadt, the team entered the planet's atmosphere under the cover from the meteor shower. One of the drop pods, containing ODST Checkman, was destroyed after his pod entered the planet's atmosphere at a bad angle. The surviving pods landed in close proximity to each other. One ODST, O'Brien, had landed in a swamp pond and was slowly sinking. Cal 141 saved O'Brien from the drowning. However, as Cal had replaced him as sniper from the mission, O'Brien's contempt for the Spartan increased. The team moved north through the ruins to gain a vantage point, taking photographs as they moved. Contact was made with a patrol of Ongoi, led by an unidentified Jarlhanite chieftain. Though the Ongoi were successfully neutralized, O'Brien was nearly killed and had to be saved by Cal. The brute was thrown over a waterfall and presumed dead, but unfortunately had survived and followed the team to their sniping position. The team arrived at the sniping point with only 2 minutes before the Prophet arrived to inspect the ruins. However, they were ambushed by the chieftain, and Cal was mortally wounded before she could fire on the Prophet. Despite the initial hesitation, O'Brien killed the Prophet with a single shot to the head from over 2 miles away as the remaining ODSTs finally dispatched the brute. Aftermath. Cal 141 died shortly after the Prophet's death, giving Cortez the recordings of the ruins on a data crystal chip. Shortly after the battle's conclusion, Dr. Catherine Halsey was able to review the footage of the Heian ruins recovered by the surviving ODSTs, and immediately reasoned them to predate any Earth civilization. However, with the Covenant's presence on the planet still strong and the Battle of Mirrodin raging on, she figured that the UNSC would be unable to spare any resources to follow up investigations in the near future. Despite this, Project Bookworm would later establish a research presence on Heian in the post-war years. Cal 141's actions during the mission and her saving O'Brien's life many times to the loss of her own changed the team's thoughts and opinions on the Spartans. Upon their return to the UNSC Kronstadt, the surviving ODSTs reacted aggressively to an army specialist who suggested the Spartans were inferior to them based on Cal's death. Battle for Alluvion. 1st through 26 January 2542. Planet Alluvion. The battle was a major conflict of the Human Covenant War, as UNSC forces were initially able to fend off the Covenant forces, and even managed to protect the colony from destruction. The arrival of a Covenant support fleet a few weeks into the battle ultimately led to the loss of the colony and the glassing of the planet's surface.
I'm nobody's babysitter, especially not some farm boy moose hunter.
I hate to be the one to break the bad news, but you weren't selected to be the primary shooter on this mission. So it seems they want your farm boy to do it? I guess that makes you the backup. Sorry, O'Brien.
I'm the backup?!
And the shooter is a Spartan.